I'm Ryan Orwoll. I work for PTC. I'm the product manager on our Vuforia Studio product line. I'm responsible for all of our eyewear and smart glasses features and functionality in our Vuforia Studio product line. So excited to be here, and thanks for attending. So just want to give a little background. In this presentation, we're going to talk about the different challenges and use cases that we're seeing with our customers when it comes to identifying the use cases and deploying AR at their businesses. Thanks to some research that the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics has provided us, it's given us some good insights into the challenges that our customers are addressing. The first is, if you look on the left side here, over the past 10 or so years, there's been a big increase in the number of job openings in the manufacturing world, but a very stagnant number of hires, people looking for those type of jobs out there. So there's this ever-growing gap of people needing to fill these new skilled manufacturing roles. At the same time, sort of as a result of having to fill those roles of people that may not be as qualified, plus our ever-increasing complexity of the products that manufacturers are creating, we're getting a decrease in the amount of productivity of those people. So there's these two trends that really influence looking out for additional capabilities, additional means to become more efficient, more profitable in the manufacturing world. So we wanted to take this and do a little bit deeper dive with our customers to understand what use cases are they addressing with AR, what challenges are they solving with AR. To give you a little background or context in that, I just want to take 2 seconds to explain where we're coming from and where our customers and the data that we received came from. So we have sort of three main AR offerings in the market today. The first is Vuforia Studio. We'll talk about this one more at the end, but think of this as sort of a PowerPoint for AR. So rather than having to go out and hire a bunch of Unity developers or programmers, you can quickly and easily create AR and MR experiences for phones, tablets, HoloLens, RealWear, and Vuzix. We also have Vuforia Chalk, which is a remote assistance application. So being able to have voice and video connectivity as a service tech when you're out in the field to somebody that's back in the office or in a different part of the world that has the expertise that you don't have, and being able to actually augment, the expert being able to augment information to the users so that they can better do their job without having to send another person out. And then lastly, we have the Vuforia Engine, which powers both Studio and Chalk, which is like an SDK that allows the lower level developers that want full access to the APIs to create AR and MR experience as well. So that's kind of the background. So we did a bunch of research with sort of 200 of our most active customers to figure out where in the value chain are they looking to add AR. A lot of the times when they come to us, we get the questions very frequently, where do I start? Like, what are your other customers doing? How are they using AR? Just because there is so many different ways and options out there to implement AR and to solve the challenges. What we found is it's spread across the whole value chain, from design to manufacturing, sales and marketing, service, and even operating the products after they've been manufactured. When we did this research, we actually identified 96 different unique enough use cases that could stand on their own. So there's got to be more, obviously, right? But we were surprised to see that there is that many different ways that they're using AR to meet their needs. We wanted to dig in even further and get a better understanding of what are the most common. So what you're seeing here is sort of the 14 or 15 of those 96 that reared their head the most often. And it did span across all 5 of those groups. So when you look at design, things like digital design review, which we kind of just talked about, manufacturing, work instructions, when you're a first-line worker using AR to help you do the task in front of you, sales and marketing, getting product demonstrations out when you couldn't do that in other means with physical products, and then service, similar to manufacturing in a lot of ways, but fixing something rather than building something. And then lastly, operations, replacing that dreaded paper operator's manual and doing it in much better, more easily to follow ways. We also learned something while we did that training use cases cut across all of them. So there's different training scenarios that fit into each one of these buckets that were very prevalent as well. So we did all this research, we figured out some of these other different ones, but we wanted to figure out or be able to answer what's the best place to start, or where are most companies really starting or getting the most opportunity out of AR. And what we found was kind of surprising and not surprising at the same time. What was surprising was that it cut across all 5 of those categories fairly evenly. We thought maybe it would be more bunched to one or the other, and we could go and focus, putting more of our efforts and our product capabilities into one or 2 of these. You'll see manufacturing and service were a little bit higher, but even on the low end, there was significant enough interest that and usage from our customers, and again, training was part of that as well. So today we're going to look at 3 of these. We're going to break them down a little bit and to dig into some of the more common use cases and look at 3 specific customers and what they're actually doing with some of our products in AR to meet their needs. So we'll lump design and marketing into design and visualization for today to kind of, since there is a lot of similarities to those, and we'll talk about those together, and then we'll look at manufacturing and service as well. So just kind of cover those. We'll dig into each some of these specific use cases as well. So let's start with both design and visualization together. So what we're seeing here are sort of 2 main specific use cases that are bubbling up maybe more than the others. The first is that collaborative design review, the very obvious kind of common one of getting multiple people in the same place or in different places looking at a new design before it's been created as a prototype or manufactured, and being able to do a design review and make updates and make changes and see it in 3D space. And what we're finding is, the feedback we're getting is that there's a much better comprehension when viewing it virtually in 3D than on a 2D piece of paper or a 2D screen on a computer. A really good example of this is one of our customers brought up their product, put a HoloLens on, and we're looking at it on top of a table. And quickly, before they even got into the conversation, one of the guys noticed that there was going to be a collision in some of the wiring and the tubing that even the automatic detection in the CAD tool couldn't pick up. But it became super obvious when they saw it in 3D space. And they went back then and looked at it on the computer screen, and sure enough, then they could see it on the computer screen, but it just didn't stick out until they put the HoloLens on. So a lot of interesting things like that are just stories we're getting like that when you see it in a context that allows you to be able to comprehend it in ways that you can't otherwise. Secondly is augmented brand experiences, or sort of a product portfolio. We've got a lot of people starting there because this is a really good place to get up and running with AR. It doesn't take a lot of complications or technical expertise to do this. And being able to show your potential customers or your customers what products you have without having to ship a product, travel with a product, especially when it's cases where something is very large and you couldn't do it by any other means. AR provides a great way to do that, and we'll get into an example of that here in a moment. But we're also seeing on that training, the overarching training that I mentioned, even just companies training their own internal employees on what their company has as in their product portfolio, so that everybody's speaking the same language, everybody's saying the same story. So we do see that one quite a bit as well. So if we look at an example of this, so actually you heard from Peggy this morning from AGCO. We work with the GSI division of AGCO, their Vuforia Studio customer, and they needed a better way in their ag business. They specialize in the grain facility structures. There's these big, really big grain facilities, and it's hard to show off the different options and the different configurations and the different layouts with those actual physical products, obviously. But when you put on a HoloLens, you can walk the customer through a site and make changes on the fly and get better feedback. So I'll move on to a little video that kind of shows this. It's kind of hard with the projector to see the different. So actually there is a whole grain facility here, and then the tower there. Not the best resolution here, but you get the idea. And one of the cool side effects that we're seeing from GSI is that when their customers make a decision and go with a plan, there's a much higher level of customer satisfaction. They're confident in the purchase that they just did, and they're confident in the future phases that they want to then add on to. So we're seeing some really cool work that the GSI is doing in more of this visualization aspect of AR, of getting the virtual representations out to their customers. Yeah, I might hold you off till the very end. I'll save time so we can come back to this though. Okay, so that's the design and viz side. Now let's move into manufacturing. So we'll look at two of the most common scenarios that we see in manufacturing. The first is, again, sort of the obvious one, augmented work instructions, step-by-step assembly instructions on how to build something, from scratch using AR instead of having to go from my work desk or my spot on the line back to my computer or flip through pages of paper. The second one is sort of similar, but one that we didn't expect to see, but are seeing this more and more, is what we're calling machine setup and changeover. One example of this is we have a company that does bottling and packaging for beverage companies. And 1 week they'll be packaging beverages from one company, and the next week they have to switch to a different company. And that means changing the whole line and all the machines to be configured for that different shape of bottle. And so instead of running back to your computer or calling in someone to help with that, and we've seen AR experiences that step the user step by step to make that much more efficient and make sure that gets done correctly. Training again shows up here, and we'll look at an example from BAE on how to do this. But what I want to mention here is two things that caught us by surprise in this research, in that we're seeing a lot of value both on a 3D holographic side, so the Microsoft HoloLens being able to place 3D augmentations to step a user through the assembly process, as well as what we refer to as the 2D assisted reality side, so devices like the RealWear HMT1 or the Vuzix M300, where companies have already content created, such as videos or PDFs or work instruction documents, that they just want to get in front of their users in a hands-free manner. So they put it in the head-mounted tablet display of those devices. It's all voice-activated, and they can move from step to step without having to set their tools down or run back to that computer. So manufacturing, we see a lot of benefits both in that sort of 3D holographic space and the 2D assisted reality as well. So I mentioned training. We're also seeing companies create AR experiences to train their employees before they actually even get out onto the factory floor. And one example similar to that is BAE Systems. So in their upstate New York facility, they make electric buses, these hybrid drive buses, and they manufacture their own batteries for these buses. And they're getting so much demand for the buses that they had to move to a second and third shifts to create these batteries. And they needed a way to get their new employees that had never done this before up and running much faster. So they used Vuforia Studio to create a HoloLens MR experience that taught them how to do that. So they're at their desk, they're wearing a HoloLens, and then floating right above them in space is the 3D object, the model showing step by step. So they're able to comprehend, I need this piece now, that piece next, to build this up piece by piece, much easier than trying to decipher pictures on a 2D image. So what you're seeing there is the user stepping through that. So we have this at our booth downstairs, so you can actually step through yourself, put the HoloLens on, and do the first 6 steps of this experience. And the numbers coming out of BAE doing this on their production floor are pretty staggering. So they're seeing 50% faster times on the floor just in general of completing the batteries. The overall training aspect of it that I mentioned is a 30% improvement the very first time through it. And then using Vuforia Studio to create the experience, they were able to do that at 1/10 the cost of those traditional means that we talked about at the beginning with coders and Unity developers. All right, so that was manufacturing. We're going to wrap up with service. So there's sort of 2 main use cases in service that come out more often. The first is augmented service instructions. So just like what we talked about with manufacturing, but instead of making something, they're fixing something. So being able to see oil change procedure step-by-step in AR is an example of that. We won't spend any more time on that since we kind of covered that in the last one. But with remote expert guidance is very common and relates to our Vuforia Chalk offering, where they can connect to that expert that doesn't have to be out there with them. And the feedback we're getting on this is fantastic. At a minimum, we're seeing numbers of 50% better first-time fix rates. And as anyone knows, having someone come out a second time is very costly and very time-consuming. So being able to have that expert see what you're seeing, but then also be able to augment and instruct you with augmentations on do this, don't touch that, move here next, it's super valuable. I don't have a video for the next one, but I'll talk through an example that we're doing with one of our customers, Howden. So they have a really interesting HoloLens experience where they make these large-scale industrial blowers and compressors that are used in water treatment facility plants. And what they're working towards is shipping a HoloLens with every one of these compressor units, that when the customer then gets the HoloLens, they can put it on at any point in time, see the IoT-connected data that's coming through ThingWorx and Azure IoT, to see the current status in real time of what's happening with that machine. And then what it does when it detects something that is happening that's wrong or is about to fail, it walks them through using AR how to either change the configuration of it, or if something's about to fail, like maybe the bearings need replacement, it walks them through a step-by-step procedure to fix the bearings and replace them. So they're doing some really interesting things, kind of connecting both the IoT world and the AR world operations and service together. All right, so then just to wrap up here, with a little bit of time left, I just want to talk about how our customers are doing this at scale. So it's one thing to be able to create a proof of concept or a prototype that's one-off and is expensive, but being able to do it quickly and rapidly and take what you've done in one experience and quickly apply it to another product line is huge. And that's where we're getting some really amazing results with the Vuforia Studio product. So as I mentioned at the beginning, quickly and easily, it's all drag and drop. You don't need coding experience to do it. You can add in your own custom code. So if you do have people that do have that expertise, we don't want to alienate them, so they can still add in their custom code to take things to the next level. But just a little demo on this. It really is as easy as I say. So it's all drag and drop. You saw the user there drag a model widget. It brings in your CAD. We support essentially the 12 most common CAD files out there. And then you just lay out in that canvas how you want your AR experience to look. In this case, it's using some of our new model target technology that recognizes, using the CAD file, the physical object, informs the user with a stencil on how to walk up to that machine, and when it recognizes that physical product, it locks tracking onto that, and then knows based on where that product is in front of the user, where to place the augmentations. So you can kind of see just all the different widgets and capabilities with binding and drag and drop to create any of the AR or MR experiences that you need. So to relate it back to this conference, especially around wearables, right now I mentioned we have the sort of the 3D and the 2D worlds, and that have very, very different use cases or very different applications, and both are supported in Vuforia Studio. So the idea here is you go into Vuforia Studio, one authoring tool, you create the experiences that you need, and then you can view them on the different devices that you may have, including phones and tablets, which aren't on this diagram, but we support as well. All through one common app that runs on all the devices, so you don't have to manage submitting your own app to the iOS store, to the Android store, to the Windows store, and so on. We take care of all that for you. Bring up the one viewing app, scan a QR code, and you're up and running with your experience. And then the last thing I just want to mention, did that not work? There we go. Bringing it all the way back to design. So PTC, got started as a CAD company with our Creo offering. Now it's called Creo. And in Creo, we take advantage of the Vuforia technology that we have, and you can publish 5 of your models straight from Creo and then view it with our viewer app that I just mentioned to help with that 3D design and being able to iterate much faster and much quicker, seeing it in 3D instead of just on the computer screen. And then we do have you can upgrade to having unlimited as well, but we're including that AR capabilities now across our product portfolio. So that wraps up my slides. Any questions?